Speaking of the solidarity, there's not much of it at Labor's conference in Brisbane because there is a big drama brewing for Anthony Albanese at the National Labor. Much of it at Labor's conference in Brisbane because there is a big drama brewing for Anthony Albanese at the National Labor conference, and it relates to his enthusiastic support of Qantas. Now, at the expense of us, the Australian public, and his own people, union cleaners, union baggage handlers and union ground staff, who the federal court, mind you, found were illegally sacked by Qantas. Even in the face of all of this, Albo and his government rejected a very, very modest request from Qatar Airlines to get one extra daily flight into Sydney and Melbourne. One a day. Now, you might be thinking, surely the PM can't defend the indefensible. How do you say to Qatar Airlines, no, you can't have one extra flight a day into Sydney and Melbourne, which will drive down the cost of airfares and open up capacity? No, you can't have that, to make sure you protect the profit margins of Qantas, because that is defending the defensible, isn't it? Well, let me tell you, Anthony Albanese, he's trying.
Bit of criticism of the Qatar Airways decision. A lot of union reps here are angry at Qantas. Why did your government lock out competition?
It's not a matter, it's actually not the way that air services agreements work. Air services agreements are between, and I was Transport Minister for 6 years, there's nothing unusual about countries wanting air services agreements that increase their capacity to fly into the major airports, which is where air services agreements come from.
Huh? So that was Laura Jays asking, from Sky News, asking the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese a very direct question. Why'd you lock out competition? What on earth was he talking about, the Prime Minister? An expanded air services agreement means more flights into Australia, which means more competition, doesn't it? So doesn't that mean by refusing to expand the air services agreement, you're locking out competition? Do you think we're stupid or something? Look, the only beneficiary, and I mean the only beneficiary of this decision was Qantas.
I understand that, but when you look at it from a consumer point of view, it looks like a protection racket around Qantas. They've already got $2.5 billion in taxpayer funds. They're charging expensive fares. They're recording record profits for shareholders. They could do with a bit more competition, couldn't they?
There is already an incredibly competitive international aviation market here in Australia. It is, if you have a look around the world, it in fact is the most competitive market in the world.
It's just not true. Why is the Prime Minister claiming to know what he's talking about when he was Transport Minister 10 years ago? This is when Manly was in a grand final, for God's sake, because the claim that we have the most competitive airports in the world is just not true anymore. The ACCC, the competition watchdog, they want more slots open to other airlines to create competition for Qantas and drive down the price of fares. That is the ACCC. It's their job. Competition watchdog. And Qantas isn't even making a secret of it. There's a bloke by the name of Andrew David. Now, he was the head of domestic and international travel at Qantas. You know what Andrew David told investors? Quote, "I've never seen such favourable international conditions. We can say that demand will outstrip supply for the immediate future and through to the end of the decade. Demand will outstrip supply. Yet, for some reason, our federal government refuses to allow Qatar to add flights to increase capacity to improve the supply of seats for all of us, the mug punters buying airline tickets." Now, according to Qantas's investor presentation, international capacity is unlikely to match demand for the next 7 years. So why on earth would the PM refuse a request to try and meet that demand by adding flights from Qatar? Now, Qatar asked to add just one service a day, mind you, one a day into Melbourne and Sydney. Surely Alan Joyce's Qantas can survive that.
This is business as usual. There's nothing extraordinary about saying that Australia's national interests should be considered.
Of course it is business as usual, Mr. Albanese. Of course it is. The business of protecting Qantas's profit margins. That's all it is. The national interest in this instance is Qantas' interest, not the interest of the flying Australian public. Now, a company that the ACCC received 1,740 complaints from, Qantas. It was the most complained about company of any company in Australia, according to the ACCC, Qantas was last year. Qantas is also a company that sacked 2,500 baggage handlers after they took more than $2 billion of our JobKeeper money designed to keep jobs. This is also a company that for decades has run a program of influence in Canberra through its secretive chairman's lounge. And they're all in on it. That's what you're not hearing much about it. There's very few people talking about it. Joe Aston in the Fin Review and us here on 2GB. And now Sky News with Laura Jace. The Liberal Party, Labor Party, Greens, the Teals, they're all in the chairman's lounge. And it is a company that only weeks after the Albanese government blocked the Qataris' increasing competition, Qantas decided to chuck Yes 23 stickers backing the Voice to Parliament on the side of its planes, and then promised to pay for the travel expenses of the Yes campaign as they move around the country. Give me a break. Albo, please. You know it just stinks to high heaven. Put down the glass of champagne in the chairman's lounge, get on the escalators, walk down to Hungry Jack's at T1 and speak to the Australians that you claim to represent. The families paying through the nose to get on a plane because of your decisions. Now, the Transport Workers Union wants to take this power away from government altogether, right? So they want an independent agency to decide who gets what access to Australian airports, and they're going to push this today at National Conference, right in front of our frequent flying PM. I'll have the TWU on the show soon.